Hello, my name is Aubrey. I'm so glad you're here. Today I want to talk about all of the most intimidating books on my TBR. So I have made quite a stack of books that are on my TBR and that scare me for one reason or another, and I'd seen some other booktubers do this type of video, and I just thought it might be fun to go through and talk about why some of these books are so intimidating to me. Spoiler alert, I think for most of these it's either going to be because the books themselves are very long or because they're part of a series that is very long. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first book I have is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This book is enormous. I think it is it over 1,000 pages? Not quite. It's about 800 pages. I have heard that it is very readable. I've gotten that comment a few times in some older videos. Samantha Shannon's prose and the pacing of the books, it doesn't feel like an 800-page behemoth, so I'm hoping this one won't be too bad. I'm planning to read it this summer, but yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I said that the size of this book didn't intimidate me. Next I have Dune by Frank Herbert, and this one intimidates me for several reasons. One, not only is it quite a large book, but also I don't know, I think I am just intimidated by what to expect from this book. It's a sci-fi classic, like I do want to attempt it at some point, but because it is a sci-fi classic, I think I have this notion that it's going to be stuffy or hard to read or hard to get through. I have heard that it's not a very character-driven book. It's more about the themes, the ideas, which is interesting, but I am more of a character-driven reader, so I don't know how this is gonna go. I want to like it, but I'm not like anticipating liking it. Again, I do still want to try it and I will read it at some point, but Dune is really scary. Next I have The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This is an absolute doorstop of a book. This is such a big book. This is over 1,000 pages, isn't it? It has to be. Yeah, it's like just at 1,000 pages. Not only is this book enormous, but the subsequent books are enormous. So books 2, 3, and 4 are all huge 1,000-page books. Again, I do really want to read this series. I know this is beloved by so many people, and I kind of want to try to tackle it this year since the 5th and, well, it's not the final book, but it's like the final book in the first arc is coming out, and I just feel like this would be an exciting time to jump onto the series, but oh my god. I am terrified of the sheer page and word count of this series. Now, I know that Brandon Sanderson is not like a super poetic writer. I'm sure that the pacing of these books will feel faster paced than I think they will. At least that's what I'm hoping. We'll see if I get around to it this year. Again, I'm hoping to, but I am terrified for my life. Next, I have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I know there's no writing on this cover, but I promise that's what this book is. I am intimidated by this book simply because I've heard that the storytelling is confusing. Apparently this book kind of jumps around in the timelines. I don't know if there's a lot of flashbacks or a lot of flash forwards, but I have just seen a lot of reviews that say that the way that this book was constructed was kind of odd and off-putting. So that's the biggest reason why I have been intimidated by this book. Of course, again, I still want to read it and I will give it a try at some point, but that is something that has put me off of it a bit. Next, I have The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington, and this is another, you know, just big ass book. I think these are all like 700 pages. And so yeah, not only is this one huge, but the entire trilogy is huge. For me, I get very slumpy with really large books that take a long time to read. And I don't know what that is. It kind of depends on how much I'm enjoying it. But if I'm only kind of enjoying it, like a 3 to 4 star, I start to really ruminate and I'm like, this is taking so long. Is there something I could be reading that I would be enjoying more? You know, I could have read so many more like shorter books by the time I finish this. I think I just get very up in my head when it comes to massive books. I'm hoping to love it. I'm hoping it feels faster paced and that the story carries me through, so we'll see. Next, I have The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This one intimidates me because I feel that this is either going to be a 5-star or a 1-star. I think I'm either going to love this or it's going to be an absolute snooze fest. It's a dreamy, atmospheric, abstract type of book, which does work for me a lot of the time, but not all the time. Again, we'll see with this one. I want to love it. I hope I love it. But there is just something about it that I'm like, what if it's too weird? What if it's too slow? What if, it doesn't make any sense and I don't like it because it doesn't make any sense? Next, I have The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, and I want to be a Robin Hobb girly, like, so bad. Like, so bad. I feel it so deep in my bones. Like, I think that Robin Hobb is going to be a favorite author of mine, and that in and of itself is kind of intimidating because, of course, like, what if she isn't? But mostly it's the sheer scope of this world that she's built. I don't know exactly how many books she has published, but it's a lot, and she has lots of trilogies and quartets all set in this same big world, and I think we're mostly following the same characters throughout. And while I'm not planning to binge all of the Realm of the Elderlings books, I probably will need to read them in somewhat quick succession so that I don't forget stuff. And so yeah, I think the sheer scope of that and her world building and just how many series there are set in this world is super intimidating. Okay, next I have The Gunslinger by Stephen King, and this is a very similar situation to the Realm of the Elderlings series, where this series is just enormous. It's a 7-book series, but you can't just read the Dark Tower series. There are all of these other Stephen King works that you have to read like alongside the series because it adds more context, and I think there are characters that pop up in other places, and so there's like this big reading order. And I've heard both camps. Like, I've heard some people say that you definitely don't have to read all those extra books, and I've heard some people say that you definitely do have to read all those extra books. And personally, I want to. Like, I want to read maybe not all of the extra books, but like at least the most important ones as I'm reading the Dark Tower series, which I just know is going to be a huge undertaking, and I feel like that might be kind of a year-long project. I'm a big fan of Stephen King. I have read a handful of Stephen King books, and I enjoy him quite a lot. So this is one that I am looking forward to tackling one day, but it is overwhelming and intimidating. Next, I have Gideon the Ninth, and it's not so much this book that I'm intimidated by, but the sequel book. Hold on, I have it right here actually. Harrow the Ninth, which I've heard is just very, very confusing. I've heard a lot of reviews say that you just have to go into this knowing that you're not going to understand anything until the end. I do find that very intriguing, but also I don't know if I'm gonna have the patience for that. When I was a little kid, I was like insufferable to watch movies or television with because I would just incessantly ask questions the whole time. Like, who is that character? Why are they doing that? What's about to happen next? What happened previously for this to be happening? Like, word vomiting questions constantly. My parents were always like, oh my god, just watch it. And even still to this day, I have a low tolerance for like not understanding what's happening in books. If I get confused or I don't understand why something is happening, I'm very likely to put it down unless it's obvious that like I'm not supposed to understand it. So I don't know. I do think it's a good thing that I have this information, that I know going into it that it's gonna be weird and confusing, but even still, I'm kind of intimidated by that experience. Okay, next I have Mort by Terry Pratchett, and again, it's not so much this book, but more just the scope of the Discworld world. I think there are, 40 plus books in the series, and again, this is not one that I'm planning to binge necessarily. I think that would be insane, but it is still just a lot. It feels kind of intimidating, and I know I don't have to read them all to enjoy Discworld, but yeah, it just feels kind of intimidating and scary to have such an enormous series. Next, I have The Demon King by Cinda Williams Chima, and I have had this for a very, very long time. I actually own all of the first quartet and all of the sequel quartet, and so in my head it's kind of like a one big long series, which is maybe not fair, but that's kind of how I've been like lumping them in my brain all this time. Yeah, I think that 8-book number is kind of intimidating to me. That is quite a lot of books, but also this series isn't very popular. I discovered this series because of Reagan over at Peruse Project. This is one of her favorite YA fantasy series, but I don't know anyone else who's read these or who likes these, and so I don't feel that like motivation to read them because I won't have anyone to talk about them with, you know? I've heard that they are just exceptionally good, so like I do want to experience them. I've been putting them off because of the sheer number of books, but also the lack of popularity. Next, I have The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This is book 1 in the Wheel of Time. I am so intimidated by the Wheel of Time. I'm going to give it a try at some point because it is a classic and I like having my own opinions on things that are very popular or that are staples in the genre, so I will read it one day, but I am dreading it. This is a 15 book series. This first book, it might not look that big, but it's 700 pages. I think all the books are quite chunky, and it's pretty well known to have like a large slump in the middle of the series. Like I think from book 7 to book 11 or something. Even diehard fans of the series don't like those books. Having to read multiple 700 plus page books, you know, in a 15 book series, like that just sounds miserable. Like I said, one day I will give it a try. I know people who love this series. It's their favorite series of all time. I need to know for myself how I feel about it, but yeah, I'm not really looking forward to this. All right, well that is it for all of the most intimidating books on my TBR. Please let me know what your most intimidating book on your TBR is. I would absolutely love to know. If you would like to watch me add a bunch more books to my TBR, you can watch my most recent book haul here. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more from me. I hope to see you next time. Bye!